international business news. Tonight's special is on South Africa. I'm Jessalyn Hernandez.
I'm Carson Cooper.
And I'm Jeffrey Baudouin.
Tonight we're going to have an in-depth look on political, currency, and cultural risks of South Africa. In our first segment, Carson Cooper will discuss political risks.
Political risk describes the possibility that investments' returns could suffer as a result of political changes or instability in a country. 3 different factors could influence political risk, including government control, legislation, and military control. In terms of political background, South Africa is a relatively young and stable democracy. Nelson Mandela, with the help of the African National Congress, rose to power in 1994 and has remained in power since. The population feels extremely indebted to the African National Congress because they ended the apartheid era and established many new freedoms. State-run industries and oligopolies greatly influence politics today. The phone company, electric company, and transportation company are all owned by the government. South Africa has many political strengths which help to mitigate the political risks. Natural resources such as gold, platinum, and silver reserves help to strengthen the economy and keep it stable. Strong legal systems are working to end corruption. Corruption has been known to be prolific in South Africa in the past, but now the legal system is working to end that era. Low terrorist activity is also a noteworthy political strength. Support for African National Congress has been unyielding, and so it is generally understood that South Africa's political system is predictable and stable. That being said, there are several political weaknesses that South Africa needs to deal with in order to mitigate its political risks. South Africa remains stuck in a honeymoon era. A low economic growth rate has been extended over a long period of time. South Africa's economy is only growing at approximately 3%. Also, South Africa has a relatively high unemployment rate. Labor union tensions have exacerbated the problem between the unemployed and the labor unions, which are relatively well off. This begs the question, how much longer will the African National Congress Party remain in power? That'll wrap it up for political risk.
Now we will look at the currency risk of South Africa. First, we will answer the question, what is currency risk? Currency risk is a potential harm that arises from changes in the price of one currency relative to another. This relationship is also known as an exchange rate. Exchange rate fluctuation has a major effect on international business. When conducting business in a foreign country, 3 major aspects should be kept in mind. First is the price that has been quoted during the negotiation, and whether that's in the firm's currency or in the foreign customer's currency. Another is the time in between an order and a delivery, and how currency can fluctuate in that time, which could result in a gain or a loss for that firm. And lastly is the exchange rate that the deal has been agreed under, and whether that exchange rate is a spot rate or the currency's value at a given time, or a hedge rate, a fixed amount that cannot change. Next, we'll look at South Africa's currency, the South African rand. The current exchange rate for the rand is that $1 can purchase you 14.44 rand. The value has increased over the past year, as you will see in the upcoming graph, but recent events have resulted in a devaluation or a decrease in demand. This isn't necessarily a bad thing for South Africa because a devaluation of currency increases purchasing power for foreign countries. This graph shows the exchange rate for the rand in regards to the US dollar over the past year. Though there is an increase in value over the past 12 months, there's definitely highs and lows for the currency. As was stated earlier, the value of the rand has been falling in regards to the major currencies out there in the world, such as the US dollar, the Grand British pound, and the euro, and this is due to a growing trade deficit right now, which sits around 21.39 billion rand, with exports 86 billion and imports 107 billion. The influences over this trade deficit is falling metal prices, which means that their exports are also falling in value. Another major player in the currency's value is how South Africa is struggling with growth. This is due to a limited supply of power and labor unrest which is occurring in the country. The deficit is also looking to grow due to a current drought which will affect the export of food. Despite these setbacks, South Africa still has the potential to be a major player in international trade, not only with its resources, but with its strategic location. Though there is a devaluation at place, this isn't a country I wouldn't second guess on investing in. South Africa does have a lot of potential and will continue to grow. We hope you enjoyed this segment on currency risk. Next, we'll hand it off to Jeffrey, who will go over cultural risk for South Africa.
Thank you, Jesselyn. I appreciate it. In this next segment, I will be discussing cultural risk. So first off, what is cultural risk? Cultural risk is when cultural misunderstandings place some human value at stake that arises from the differences in language, lifestyles, mindsets, customs, and religion. South Africa's culture and business customs. South Africa is known as the Rainbow Nation for the fact that it's one of the most multicultural countries in the world. Along with the indigenous black peoples of South Africa, colonialism and immigration have brought in white Europeans, Indians, Indo-Malayas, Chinese, and many more. The rural African nations versus the urban African communities. In the rural areas, the majority of the whites are Afrikaner farmers, have sometimes narrow views on the world. However, at the same time, they value human decency over materialism. In the many rural black communities, they are still rooted in the traditions of their heritage, whereas the increasingly newly developed urban black community combines their roots with the urban environment and the international influences that surround them and attempts to grow with the progress of the country. In the urban areas, city dwellers live life in the fast lane, which inversely affects their outlook. People from Johannesburg are often regarded as having materialistic values and being more interested in what you own rather than who you are as a person. They prefer to see themselves as urban, viewing their country cousins as less sophisticated. South Africa's language. South Africa recognizes 11 very diverse languages, which is another perfect example as to why they are known as the Rainbow Nation. English is the most common spoken language in commercial and official public life. However, English is only the 5th most spoken home language in the country. Most South Africans are multilingual, meaning that they're able to speak more than one language. This makes it a lot easier for businesses coming into the country to converse and connect with the large majority of the population. isiZulu is the most common language spoken by 11.6 million people, followed by the isiSouth, Afrikaans, and then English. Looking at the graph that is depicted on the screen, it is very clear and evident that isiZulu is the mother tongue of South Africa, with 22.7% of South Africa's population speaking isiZulu. This graph also depicts just how diverse the language is in South Africa. This is probably the biggest challenge in cross-cultural risks that businesses need to be made aware of before they decide to set up shop in South Africa. Seeing that language is the way we all communicate with one another, it is very important for businesses to understand the language barriers in the countries they have interest in attempts to overcome cross-cultural risk.
We hope you enjoyed tonight's special on South Africa's political, currency, and cultural risks.
Join us next week when we look at the question, is underwater basket weaving the next Olympic sport?
And I'd like to thank one of our many sponsors, Spalding, for being a great sport and supporting the team and helping us keep the lights on like Motel 6.
Have a great night.